In my last video, I talked about the Adelaide Street Circuit for 15 minutes straight. I'm going to talk about it for a few more minutes here, its proposals in particular. My source for these is Matt Koch's brilliant Speed Cafe article from 2020, which I've put a link to in the description if you want to check it out, and I recommend you do. Let's start with the first ever proposal from 1983, which was penned by Bill O'Gorman, the man who was instrumental in bringing Formula One to Adelaide. This design came with O'Gorman's initial letter to John Bannon, the Premier of the state of South Australia, where he made his case for holding a Formula One race in the city. It's located just to the northeast of the current track. The proposal is 4.6 kilometres long, anti-clockwise, and by my count, has 18 corners. The 800-metre start-finish straight is on King William Road, and after a long flat-out blast going downhill from North Terrace, stops just short of the bridge and turns hard right onto Victoria Drive. I can't say for sure what side of King William Road would have been reserved for the pit lane, but I think it would have been on the driver's right, and the exit would likely have been on the inside of Turn 1, but that's just pure conjecture on my part. Take it with a full bag of salt. The elevation stays roughly level on the south shore of the river as we go full throttle through turns 2 and 3 past the University of Adelaide. The next braking zone is into turn 4, a sharp medium-speed left-hander. Runoff in this section would be sparing, but pretty standard for the early 1980s. My gut tells me turn 4 would be taken in third gear, depending on the setup of the car. A short straight takes us to a section that probably wouldn't have passed F1 safety standards by the mid-1990s. It would have seen cars braking through a hard left onto the Albert Bridge with no possibility for runoff area. It leads straight into a 90-degree left-hander that takes us off Frome Road and onto War Memorial Drive. For me, this is the most interesting part of the track. Another left-hand turn takes us uphill to a sweeping right-hander around Red Gum Park, cresting in the middle of the turn before plunging downhill again. At the bottom is a right-handed kink that might have been flat out if the driver was brave enough. Then, as the road starts another uphill grade, there's another 2 kinks to the left and right on the way into the next heavy braking zone. This sharp left might have had a wide exit, taking us briefly onto Sir Edwin Smith Avenue and passing the statue of Sir Donald Bradman and going downhill once more. After that, we get back onto War Memorial Drive and pass by Adelaide Oval, where there's another right-hand sweeper waiting to catch the driver out. Once again, this is a place where I don't think too much runoff area could be implemented. Somehow I doubt people would be happy if a significant portion of Pinky Flat was felled for a gravel trap. Then a curved braking zone spits us out into another 90-degree left onto Montefiore Road, across the river again, and back towards the Adelaide CBD. Around where Montefiore Road becomes Morfett Street, drivers would have had to prepare for what looks like the most difficult braking zone on the lap. Adelaide is a planned city, and its road grid, designed by Colonel William Light, incorporated 6 town squares, 1 in the north portion and 5 in what would become central Adelaide. The one that bears his name, Light Square, would have made turns 16 and 17 a hell of a challenge. Going slightly uphill from a top speed of around 280 clicks, potentially more, drivers would have had to brake hard through a left bend, making sure not to lock up on the way through. They would continue slowing while bearing right to open up the left turn onto Curry Street as much as possible. This may have been the part of the circuit where the most crashes happened. A long straight and a braking zone where the track leans one way and then the other, on the way into a turn that would have prioritised mid-corner speed to keep up pace down the following straight. A hefty combination. Can I see this being used for racing nowadays? Absolutely not, unless there was a slow chicane before it. Who knows, we might have seen just that. After the Curry Street straight, once more with feeling. A 90-degree left to take the driver back onto King William Road and end the lap. It's incredibly different to the circuit we know and love, but seems to have a fun variety of corners, particularly in the middle sector, and the surroundings are certainly a what's what of the city, passing by many Adelaide landmarks and crossing the river twice. It may not have had as much longevity as the real Adelaide Street Circuit, and safety standards would have caught up to it fairly quickly, but this original proposal is certainly interesting. I wish I could say the same about the second proposal. Okay, that might be doing it a disservice. The second proposed layout does have a few interesting elements, mainly the fact that it's nothing but straights. Also, you might have noticed that it's close to the layout that ended up being used. About 1.8 kilometers of this clockwise plan would later form parts of the final circuit that F1 used in the 80s and 90s. But this one, for all of its 8 turns that I count, is public roads, with no purpose-built section for the pits and paddock. The start-finish straight would have been on Duquetteville Terrace, which would form the Brabham Straight on the final track, and the super-slow Duquetteville hairpin would have been turn 1. From there, a ridiculously long 1.5 kilometer straight takes the driver up Wakefield Road. On the way, we pass the site of the Victoria Park Racecourse, where the current track's purpose-built section is located. The second proper corner is a 90-degree right-hander onto Pulteney Street. Sorry to all the Adelaideans watching if I pronounce that wrong, please don't murder me. We proceed north for another 500-ish meters until we get to Hindmarsh Square, where another right turn is made onto Grenfell Street. At the end of this straight is turns 4 and 5, a 90-degree switchback negotiating East Terrace. This is where the actual circuit is rejoined, at the site of the old S-bend at the end of Hutt Street. From there, it's basically the same as the track F1 raced on, a straight down Rundle Road to the final corners. Now here is where I'm not too certain on the configuration. The Speed Cafe article does show the turns as they are seen here, but it uses the automated directions function of Google Maps to illustrate the route, and that shows you how you would actually need to drive the roads in real-life traffic. So it's a bit unclear to me. Is this layout correct? Or was the plan already in place to have the quick flick of Brewery Corner? I can't say for sure. Either way, that's the end of the lap and, well, can you imagine if this is what they went with? Jacques Lafitte apparently approved of it. This would have been a low downforce blast where slipstreaming and raw power would decide on-track battles. It would have been just as hard on the brakes as the current layout is, and having the Duquetteville hairpin as the first turn would be a recipe for carnage at race starts. It's nice to think of a street circuit version of Monza or even Silverstone, but all things considered, I'm glad they went with the layout they did. It certainly proved its worth. If you've stuck around to this point, thanks for going on this little journey with me into what might have been. And again, if you haven't seen my showcase at the Adelaide Street Circuit already, click up in the top right to watch it. Before I go, I'd like to thank my patrons, listed here. A special shout out to my super serious supporters, Adam Miller, Aerotech, Callum Crayston, Cisco Scaramuzza, CJ Flash 99, Ira Felberg, Jay Kennedy, Jess Moore, Michael Hollinshead, Pub With No Beer, The Original Sticks, Thomas Clarendon Blair, and Tom Hins. If you like my videos and want to support me in my efforts to make more, become a patron today at patreon.com/SouthPawRacer. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you at the first corner.